The unsolved Texarkana Moonlight Murders. The video recounts the 1946 Texarkana Moonlight Murders, attacks on 8 people, 5 fatally, tracing how an unknown assailant dubbed the Phantom Killer terrorized a town, ignited national headlines, and spawned decades of speculation around suspects like career criminal Youell Swinney, who was never convicted for the murders despite circumstantial evidence, and his wife's recanted statements. It weaves the sequence from the first assault on Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry, through the double homicides of Richard Griffin and Polly Moore, and of Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker, to the shift from lovers at Lane's to the farmhouse attack that deepened panic and fed a media frenzy that helped coin the phantom legend under Texas Ranger Captain Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzaullas' high-profile presence, leaving the case unsolved and culturally cemented by works like The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Night was supposed to be a promise, a hush after the day's heat, cicadas sawing at the dark, a town curled into its rituals. But in the spring of 1946, Texarkana learned that some silences can stalk you back. That's where this story lives, in the space between the door you just locked and the question of whether it's enough in the distance between 2 streetlights, where myth pretends to be safety and history whispers otherwise. Some call him the Phantom Killer. Others refuse to give him a name. What's beyond dispute is simpler and crueler. People were hunted, and a town was changed forever. It began on a February night when a car idled on a dirt road, the engine ticking as it cooled. 2 young people lingering in that fragile privacy that every small town pretends it doesn't notice. A beam of light split the window, too bright, too sudden, and a voice told them he didn't want to kill them if they obeyed. He wore a white mask, a pillowcase or burlap with eye holes, the kind of cheap terror you can make with scissors and a knot, and carried a pistol that made promises his words didn't keep. He beat the young man, shattered his skull with the butt of the gun, and violated the young woman, then vanished when distant headlights rolled across the road like a slow dawn that came early for them and too late for everyone else. The survivors gave conflicting descriptions: light-skinned black, dark-tanned white, a confusion born from trauma and the briefest of glimpses through a cut cloth. But both remembered the height, the presence, the mask, and the way fear can choreograph a body against its will. 1 month later, the mystery grew teeth. A double murder on a quiet back road. Richard Griffin, a veteran trying to find normal, and Polly Ann Moore, 17, just 6 weeks into a new romance and years away from the life she should have had. They were found posed, shot in the head, with a .32 caliber cartridge casing left like a calling card the killer never signed, but kept repeating. The staging made investigators wonder, was he hurried, or was he careful? Did he know them, or did he only know how to make a scene say what he wanted it to say? The rain washed tracks away, and curiosity trampled what the rain missed. Even in death, they were outnumbered by footsteps that did not belong to the living or the dead, but to a public already grasping for something to hold that did not look like fear. Texarkana called for help. Jurisdictions folded into each other the way the town straddles a state line. Texas here, Arkansas there, grief everywhere. And in swept a ranger in a white hat, Captain Manuel Lone Wolf Gonzaullas. He made quotes for newspapers and plans for dark roads, told citizens to oil their guns and mind their trigger fingers, and became both symbol and spectacle. Patrols crisscrossed the night. The town bought out ammunition and window shades. At dusk, storefronts shut, and families turned their living rooms into bunkers. A headline coined a myth: Phantom Killer eludes officers. No one had seen him clearly, but the name fit the one thing everyone could see: his absence, his afterimage, the shape he left in the spaces he'd already emptied. Then April brought its most merciless chorus. Betty Jo Booker, 15, finished her saxophone set at the VFW, a prodigy wrapped in small-town pride, and met her friend Paul Martin, 16, for a ride home. By sunrise, Paul lay by North Park Road, shot through the nose, ribs, hand, neck, wounds that read like a struggle you can't choreograph, only survive until you can't. Betty Jo would be found hours later, nearly 2 miles away, fully clothed, posed with one hand tucked into the pocket of her buttoned overcoat, as though decency might rewrite the last page if it tried hard enough. The same. 32 linked the bullets here to the earlier double murder. The killer had driven Paul's car and left it with the keys still in the ignition. A casual exit that felt more like punctuation than flight. Panic finished doing what grief had begun. The town that dreaded sundown wasn't yet a movie. It was a sentence people were already living. Reporters descended. Radios repeated the dread at supper time and just before bed. Newspapers sold fear behind fonts that shouted the same word, phantom. The community armed itself while investigators grimly counted comparisons, ballistics, fingerprints, the thin sciences of a decade that invented certainty by squinting through microscopes and hoping guns told the whole truth. Even the survivors' conflicting descriptions became an echo. Maybe the mask mattered more than the face under it, because it permitted anyone's suspicion to wear it for a night, and no one could swear they hadn't seen it in their neighbor's eyes or in the mirror on a bad day. There were suspects. There are always suspects. One would outlive the rest in rumor. Youell Swinney, a career car thief, picked up on stolen vehicles that threaded through the nights of blood like a lower melody. His wife said things, confessions, details that sounded like the inside of the story no one else could have known, then recanted. The law learned once again that truth is a skittish animal in a marriage under pressure. Without her testimony, prosecutors stepped back. Swinney went away for theft, not murder, while 2 lead investigators and later a nephew of Sheriff Bill Presley would say or write, with the stubbornness of grief that needs an ending, that he was their man. The courts never said so. The case stayed what it had been since the first headline, unsolved. But to reduce the story to the killer is to misread the town. Texarkana was already a place with soldiers coming home from a war that changed what counted as normal, where trauma had no clinical name that neighbors could say without shame, and where a dance at the VFW felt like the kind of medicine that doesn't fix anything and still manages to heal a little. The murders did not just end lives, they fractured the contract between a community and its nights. People canceled midnight movies, bought locks and dogs, and learned new ways to approach their own front doors without getting shot by a friend with good intentions and a loaded shotgun. Vigilantes patrolled, and parents made curfews out of thin air and hard fear. The phantom didn't solely haunt lovers' lanes. He haunted the choices people made about each other, and he's still there whenever rumor outruns evidence. Decades later, the legend towers. Films retell it with the embellishments that make memory marketable. Writers and podcasters chase the figure through microfilms, interviews, and the archives we build, because we cannot leave the dead alone when justice hasn't tucked them in. But the truest map may still be the first one. A dirt road outside of town, a saxophone's last notes evaporating into April, a car abandoned with its keys in the ignition, the sound of a door being locked for the first time by someone who used to sleep with the windows open. If there's a lesson here, it isn't just about evil's audacity. It's about the fragile rituals that keep fear from rewriting us. Names can be masks, headlines can be mirrors. The phantom is both what one person did and what many people felt. And in that overlap, a mystery survives because it has more than one body to live in. Maybe justice is occasionally a story that never ends, a case you carry like a photograph that fades but never disappears. Or maybe the question, who was he, matters less than the ones the town still asks itself. Who were we then, and who did we become afterward? And tonight, if the dark is a little louder where you live, listen closely. That isn't a ghost. It's the ordinary world insisting on being extraordinary again. The unlocked door relocked, the porch light left on, the promise that the worst night cannot have the last word. But remember, the distance between safety and fear is often a story someone tells you. Tell a better one. References to the historical events, investigative threads, and the enduring suspect discussion are rooted in documented accounts of the Texarkana Moonlight Murders contemporary coverage that coined the Phantom Killer, and later analyses that revisited suspects like Youell Swinney without securing a conviction.